Without question, one of the most popular Star Wars characters is Boba Fett, despite having less than 2 minutes of screen time in his first appearance. And we've had many, many Boba Fetts over the years, including the first one from 1978, even before he made his appearance, as almost a preview figure for Empire. Now, I'm still kind of waiting for that figure based on that early prototype Fett mail-away offer. That would be really cool. It kind of seems like a no-brainer that they would repaint Fett and release him in this armor colors. But hey, while we can't have everything, we have been treated to updates of Fett over the years. But the one Fett figure that really stands out, that was literally a game changer for modern Star Wars toys, is what shipped in this master carton here. The 300th action figure! Yay! Now this wasn't just an action figure, this was a true deluxe offering, where we got a window box that you could actually see the figure from both the front and the back, as well as a beautiful diorama that showed off Bespin, because this is clearly an Empire Strikes Back version of Fett. I mean, he looks like he just walked right out of a Ralph McQuarrie painting. The previous Fett that we'd had single-carded in Power of the Force 2 was based on his look from Return of the Jedi, which is a different belt, different colors, wasn't quite screen accurate. I mean, heck, the very first Boba Fett wasn't exactly screen accurate either. These colors weren't based on his appearance in the film because it was done, well, before the film came out, hence the card art was a painting. This Fett was based on his appearance from a parade to promote the original Star Wars before Empire came out to keep up fan momentum. And the deco on his outfit during the parade was a little different, but it did inspire the Kenner figure. We did get a double-carded, or rather a figure set of Fett in the Shadows of the Empire pack, but again, it wasn't quite screen accurate, the helmet wasn't quite the right size. That's what brings us to this. The first single-carded, truly accurate Empire Strikes Back action figure of Boba Fett ever made. Can you believe it took like 30 years to actually get that figure? Well, maybe it wasn't 30 years, 20 years? Whatever it was the 300th figure. You could spin the figure around and check out his backpack through a see-through window, and there was a cross-sell of the first 300 figures, well, by name. It's kind of hard to read them all because they're covered up. And I'm not sure how Han and Carbonite was the 100th figure when there were only 92 carded figures in the original line. But hey, I didn't do the math. Math has never been my thing. And Mara Jade was number 200? Well, either way, however they're doing the counting, this Boba Fett, released in Power of the Force 2, was now going to be very quickly obsolete because the new figure was a complete game changer. We would get future Fett figures which would be better, more articulated, come with better accessories, and, well, sometimes would even come with figures from the prequels. But the 300th Boba Fett, while not the most articulated figure, was the first time that we got a modern Star Wars figure, not only that could be in a full screen-accurate battle stance and have the amount of deco to make it screen-accurate, but the scale was corrected. Looking at the original Power of the Force 2 figures that were launched in 1995, one of the big critiques of them was that they were too buffed out. I mean, yes, Mark Hamill, as handsome as he is, never quite looked like this, even on the preview pictures where he was shown in painting with Leia grabbing his knee. The reason for this is back in the early 1990s, doing super buff action figures was all the trend. Kids were really into strong heroes coming off of the 1980s and the giant muscle men like Rambo, He-Man, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, etc., mixing a little, fictional characters with real-life actors. But yes, muscles were in all toy lines in the early 90s. So it made sense if you were selling a toy line to kids that you would want to buff up your Star Wars figures. Now, this didn't last very long. It took about 2-3 years to make corrections, because that's how long it takes in the toy industry to make a change. But Luke was slimmed down, at least, to make him more screen accurate, but he wasn't quite at the 3 3/4 scale that would come to be the true scale for the line for the bulk of its run. This 300th Boba Fett was the first time we truly got a 3 3/4 figure. Not only was the figure scaled down correctly, but the accessories were as well. Previous Power of the Force 2 figures had giant oversized blasters. This was done to make it easier for kids to clip them into their hands. And you could see the influence of this figure. Noting the second to the right Han was the Power of the Force 2 offering. And yes, after this Fett, the line had to be drawn.
Again. The line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
It's pretty clear. After the 300th Boba Fett, Star Wars figures were different. The ones that came out beforehand and the ones that came out after are dramatically noticeable based on the body type. Previously, you had buffed up body, extra armor, and accessories that were larger than they would be in scale to the figure. After this Boba Fett, pretty much the opposite. And you could see it pretty clearly when you take almost any figure that was released before the 300th Boba Fett and then pair it with a figure that came out afterwards. It's noticeable across the board. The changes that we saw in sculpt, articulation, and I will say again, importantly, in size of accessories, made the figures much truer to the 3 3/4 scale. And they worked really great as a line. It showed a huge improvement over where we were just 2-3 years ago. And this figure, this 300th Boba Fett, was the domino that essentially knocked into all future figures, where we would now see a more realistic scale and better articulation. The figure was used later on, at least the tool was, for a San Diego Comic-Con, a silver version of Boba Fett, which, hey, the silver figures were, I guess, kind of cool, but, to me they were like weird trophy one-off. I will say, though, at Comic-Con, I happened to be standing literally in the right place at the right time by the Hasbro booth, and I asked them when the Boba Fett figure was going to go on sale, and when Jeremy Bullock, the original actor for Fett, was going to be doing the signing. The Hasbro rep basically told me that, hey, I'd have to come back later because he couldn't give that information out. And then suddenly, Jeremy Bullock literally came out right in front of me, and the Hasbro rep turned to me and says, oh, I guess we're doing that right now, and you're first in line. Talk about literally being in the right place at the right time. So, yeah, that's how I got my silver Boba Fett with Jeremy Bullock signing it. It was definitely one of my more fun San Diego Comic-Con memories. All right, so while this was definitely not the greatest Fett ever made, and we would get better articulation, especially in the vintage series, and heck, even some of those 6-inch Black Series Fetts would be pretty impressive, but this is a 3 3/4 playlist. This Fett, the 300th action figure produced by Hasbro Kenner, was a game changer, and all figures after this were now going to take a page from his aesthetics.